So everybody goes over the countries that are the hardest to invade. But nobody ever goes over the weakest countries, the countries that are the easiest to invade. Some countries are very, very easy to invade because they have no allies, because they literally are just pieces of land, or are very, very small. We're not going to be going over every small country. For example, Luxembourg and Iceland Iceland would be pretty easy to invade. No one lives there. But Iceland is a part of NATO. And of course, we're going over historical examples as well. The first country that is very, very easy, and also we're going over the topography of the world. And by that example, the easiest countries to invade are some of the easiest countries. So we'll be going over various countries. First country is Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, with Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Four of these countries are in NATO, so they don't really have to worry, but Belarus and Ukraine are the worst. Why? Because they're basically just flat land. People think Poland is essentially separated from Russia, and also Poland is in NATO as well, which means they get protection from America and most of the European countries. But in history, Poland got invaded many, many times. But Ukraine and Belarus are essentially flat lands that can be invaded by Russia at any time. Russia is far more powerful militarily and economically than Belarus and Ukraine. Even Poland it can beat both of these countries in a match. Belarus does have one advantage over Ukraine. Belarus is allies of Russia. So Ukraine loses out of the two countries. The Baltic countries would be on this list if they were not in NATO. The Baltic countries have very, very small populations and they're mostly flat land. So yeah, the Baltic countries would be pretty easy to invade and take over. The next countries that are pretty easy to invade are, of course, all of these countries out here, okay? Excluding Australia and New Zealand, all of these guys out here. Micronesia, Nauru, Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, Tuvalu, Kiribati, Marshall Islands, Fiji, Tonga, and Samoa. New Caledonia could be excluded from this list because they're part of France. And you'll be fighting against NATO if you invaded them. And some of these countries do have protections from the United States. Yes, some of these guys do. Marshall, for example, Marshall Islands is protected by America because they used to be a part of America. And a few more of these guys are protected by various other countries. But of course, these countries are very, very weak. Most of these countries have very small populations because they're mostly, atolls and islands. They could be colonized pretty easily by other countries. And some of these countries are dependencies of other countries. Either USA, France, and even New Zealand and Australia. So yeah, if these guys... But the problem is, who would invade some of these countries? For example, Tuvalu. Tuvalu has no strategic importance whatsoever. So yeah, some of these countries have very little strategic importance. The next country that is pretty easy to invade are these guys down here. Suriname and Guyana. So they have a lot of rainforest, but almost no one lives there. Essentially, most of the people live at the top of these countries, and Suriname doesn't even have 1 million people, and Guyana barely has over 1 million people. If Brazil and Venezuela decide to say, okay, Guyana and Suriname, your time is up, they're gone, okay? Especially if Brazil invades them, they're used to fighting in the jungles anyways. French Guyana is excluded from this because that is a part of France. So, yeah, French Guyana got off easy. And of course, next is all these Caribbean countries. Yeah, these guys are pretty easy to invade. We won't have to go over why these countries are so easy to invade. I'm talking about the tiny guys here, okay? All the guys over here. The Bahamas was probably much more harder to invade than St. Kitts and Nevis, which is just 2 islands, basically. Other easy countries to invade. Now we're going to Africa, the home of the easiest countries to invade. All of these countries, but there are some countries like, why haven't you mentioned these countries yet? Well, countries like San Marino, Vatican City, and Monaco are protected by bigger countries. So if any country invaded those countries, for example, Andorra would have to deal with both Spain, all of NATO, same thing with Vatican City and San Marino and Monaco, because even though those countries are not part of NATO, they're still allies with bigger countries in NATO. So those countries would easily get out free. Same thing with countries that have been historically easy to invade, such as Denmark, because Denmark is very small, Luxembourg, because come on, Luxembourg is tiny. But another country that's pretty easy to invade is Kosovo. Why? Because Kosovo has very few allies. They are, and yeah, so if Serbia really wanted Kosovo back, they could probably easily invade it. Kosovo only has like 2 million people. The only opposition would be Albania, which is a part of NATO. So yeah, that country is pretty much toast. Macedonia is another pretty easy country to invade. Until recently, Macedonia had no allies. So if Greece said okay, it'll probably be now. Okay, yeah, Macedonia would be toast. It's gone. Okay, another country that's pretty easy to invade is Somalia. Oh yes, Somalia. Somalia is already in many troubles. It's in a civil war and it's in infighting itself. But Somalia has one of the worst GDPs in the world. It's one of the poorest countries in the world, and yeah, Somalia is mostly, if you look at the topographic map of the world, is mostly desert, with all the actual rough terrain being in Ethiopia. So if Ethiopia decides it doesn't invade Somalia, they can. So yeah. Another country that's pretty easy to invade is Uruguay. Uruguay is a very small country in South America. It is wedged between Brazil and Argentina. It's basically the Switzerland of South America. But again, Uruguay is a very small country in terms of population. Next is all these guys down here, okay? All of you, okay? All of these, Central American countries. Yeah, all of you guys are on the list. No, first of all, Costa Rica, Panama, and Nicaragua have very small populations. Honduras and El Salvador also as well. Guatemala is the only the only populated country here is Mexico of 130 million people. So if Mexico really wanted to take over all of Central America, it could. And let's not forget the weakest member of the country, of all these countries. Yes, Costa Rica has no military, but at least if it gets invaded, it can still call on its military, on some of its people, and train them in emergency. Belize, it has no people. Belize has around 500,000 people, and that's like nothing, okay? If we go on the list of countries by population, Belize is pretty low on the list. Belize has less people than Brunei, Malta, Cape Verde, Suriname, Luxembourg, and Montenegro, and various other countries much higher on the list. And now let's go through the speed round. All countries with less of a million people are pretty easy to invade, probably with the exception of Bhutan. Why is Bhutan the only exception? Well, and of course Iceland and small countries that are members of NATO like Montenegro and Luxembourg. Well, it's because Bhutan is protected by India. So basically, you have to deal with all of India to take over Bhutan if you really want to. And also, Bhutan has no strategic importance, as it's basically just a bunch of mountains with very few people living in it. So yeah, why would you invade Bhutan? There's really no point in invading that country. But all of you guys below 1 million people. The other countries that are pretty easy to invade is, let's go to Africa. Eswatini and Lesotho. Well, they have no people. They're very tiny countries. I think they're probably protected by South Africa, so they'd have to deal with all of South Africa as well. Another country is pretty easy to take of. Oh, all of these guys over here. Yeah, but probably besides Cote d'Ivoire, all these countries will not put up a fight, okay? You have Benin, you have Guinea-Bissau, which has no people, Guinea, Togo, Benin, all these guys over here, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and let's not forget the strongest or the weakest of them all, the Gambia, which of course has no people. Of course, if you want to invade, if it's Gambia only has like 2 million people. It's actually a lot for a small country, but yeah. Now, other countries that were pretty easy to invade. Now let's get over to other countries that were pretty easy to get invaded and take over. Next is Qatar and Bahrain. These countries have very strategic places in modern day because they have a lot of oil. First of all, they don't have a lot of people because they're very small islands. And second of all, if you really want to blockade these countries, you can really just blockade the Persian Strait and they go, oh, and these countries are doomed, and you can take them over. That's it. Especially Qatar, they're not even, they're getting blockaded by, Saudi Arabia. Yeah. Another country that's pretty easy to take over is Brunei, because it's really tiny. Yeah, it's really tiny. Yeah, all the countries with less than 1 million people, we already gone over. So yeah, most of those countries will be pretty easy to take over. So yeah, those are all, and of course, now let's get over some other countries that are pretty easy to take over, invade. Yes, pretty easy to invade. Looking for the map. Looking for the map. Looking for the map. Looking for the map. Oh yeah, Taiwan. Oh wait, I don't think Taiwan would be. Taiwan isn't that easy to invade. If you were China, it would be pretty easy to invade. But nope, Taiwan is not easy. Timor-Leste. Well, Timor-Leste is a very tiny country of west. I think it's western. It's around like 1 million people. Or East Timor. Timor-Leste has like 1 million people. And other countries that would be pretty easy. Mauritius would be pretty easy as well because because it's a tiny island in the middle of off so close to Madagascar. So yeah, and yeah, that's basically all the easiest countries to take over to invade. So yeah, take over the easiest countries to invade. And here's the list of the countries by population and the list of military alliances. Some of these countries are going to be pretty hard to take over. Oh, and yeah, there's a lot of alliances as well. So yeah, and there are some alliances that you also have to take into factor, like Taiwan. Taiwan is allies of America, and Belarus. You have to take into factor the alliance with Russia. Or otherwise, Belarus is just flat land. You can take a piece of that. Any strong military near it could take over. And of course, there are various alliances around the world that we didn't even go into. Taking the factor around the world. We already went over NATO. But without NATO, a lot of these European countries are pretty weak. You gotta talk about Montenegro, Slovakia, which doesn't have many people, Kosovo, you have Slovenia, no one lives there, you have Luxembourg, you have all of these really tiny boys here, which are still protected by bigger countries, the Baltics, and Denmark, and some of the weaker countries in Europe. But first of all, what's the point in war? There's really no point in war. If someone really wants to take over the world, they would have to contend with the strongest countries as well. They'll have to still contend with, even if someone takes over one of these strongest countries, a madman or a crazy person. Like for example, if someone takes over, makes some crazy person like Kim Jong Un takes over China, they will still have and wants to declare war on the entire world. They will still have to deal with India, Russia, France, the UK, Spain, and most importantly, United States, and the most scariest of all, Sealand. Goodbye.